The massive space station hung in the darkness like a crystal city among the stars. It was bigger than most moons and sparkled with lights from a dozen different alien worlds. This was Kepler Prime Station, home to the Galactic Council, where the most powerful beings in the galaxy made decisions that affected billions of lives. Ambassador Zex Thara moved through the main corridor on legs that looked like walking diamond pillars. Her crystal body caught the light and threw rainbows across the metal walls. She was nervous, though her kind did not show emotions the way other species did. Today was different from any other day in the past 1,000 years. Today, they would meet the humans. The council chamber was enormous, with seats arranged in circles that went up toward a domed ceiling. Each seat was built for a different type of alien body. Some were filled with gas for beings that floated like clouds. Others had pools of liquid for water creatures. The biggest seats held the Titan Confederacy members, giants who could crush a car with their bare hands. Elder Vorth sat in one of those giant seats, his gray skin covered in scars from countless battles. He had conquered 17 star systems and ruled over 40 billion beings. Next to him sat Commander Zaktor, whose blue skin shifted colors when he was angry or excited. The Hegemony war fleet followed his orders without question. In the center of the room, a dozen other species waited. The Zephyrians looked like tall birds with metal feathers. The Krillian swarm representatives were actually thousands of tiny insects that moved together like one mind. The Nexus Collective sent robots with glowing red eyes that calculated every possible outcome of the meeting. Everyone was talking at once, their voices mixing into a strange chorus of clicks, whistles, and electronic sounds. "Why do we waste time with these primitives?" Elder Vorth's voice boomed across the chamber. "They have barely left their homeworld. They use chemical rockets like children playing with fire." Zex Thara's crystal body chimed softly, the sound her people made when they disagreed. "The survey. Reports show they have spread to several systems. They cannot be completely helpless." Commander Zaktor's skin flashed orange with amusement. 5 systems in 300 years. My people conquered 20 systems in half that time. These humans are slow learners. The conversation stopped when the main doors opened with a deep, humming sound. Every alien in the chamber turned to look as 3 figures walked into the room. They were smaller than most of the other species, with smooth pink skin and hair that grew from their heads in different colors. They walked on 2 legs and wore simple black uniforms with small metal decorations. Captain Jake Morrison led the group. He was a tall man with short brown hair and calm blue eyes. He looked around the chamber without showing any fear or surprise, as if he walked into rooms full of aliens every day. Behind him came Ambassador Lisa Carter, a woman with red hair, pulled back in a neat style. Her green eyes took in every detail of the room and the creatures in it. The third human was different from the other 2. Sergeant Mike Powell was shorter and more muscular, with scars on his hands that showed he had been in fights before. He stayed close to the other humans and watched everything with the careful attention of someone whose job was to keep people safe. "Welcome to Kepler Prime Station," Zex Thara said, her voice making musical sounds that the translation devices turned into words. "I am Ambassador Zex Thara of the Crystal Hegemony. We represent the Galactic Council, the governing body of civilized space." Ambassador Carter stepped forward and smiled, showing her white teeth. "Thank you for inviting us. I am Ambassador Lisa Carter, representing the United Earth government. This is Captain Jake Morrison of our space fleet, and Sergeant Mike Powell of our diplomatic security team." Elder Vorth leaned forward in his massive chair, making it creak under his weight. "Your species is very young. How long have you been traveling between stars?" "About 300 years, Captain Morrison answered simply. Several aliens made sounds that the translation devices could not interpret, but they seemed to be laughing. Commander Zaktor's skin shifted to a bright yellow color. 300 years, and you have only reached 5 systems? My people traveled farther than that in their first 50 years of spaceflight. We took our time, Ambassador Carter said, with the same calm smile. We wanted to learn about the galaxy before making too much noise. The chamber fell quiet. Most species rushed to expand as quickly as possible once they learned to travel between stars. The idea of going slowly on purpose was strange to them. "Let us begin the formal presentations," Zexthara announced. "Each member of the council will demonstrate their capabilities and achievements. This will help our new friends understand the galaxy they have entered." The Zephyrians went first. Their representative, a tall bird-like creature with silver feathers, activated a holographic display that filled the center of the chamber. Images of massive ships appeared, firing beams of superheated plasma that could melt through the hull of any spacecraft. The display showed Zephyrian fleets destroying asteroid fields and turning small moons into molten rock. "The Zephyrian Republic controls 43 systems," the bird creature said in a voice like wind chimes. "Our plasma weapons can destroy any target from a distance of half a light year." Next came the Krillian swarm. The thousands of tiny insects moved together to form the shape of a larger creature, then activated their own display. It showed waves of bioengineered warriors sweeping across planets, adapting to any environment and overwhelming enemies through sheer numbers. "The swarm grows stronger with each battle," they spoke with one voice made of thousands of tiny sounds. "We have assimilated the biological advantages of every species we have encountered. Resistance is futile." The Nexus Collective was next. Their robot representative did not move or show emotion, as it displayed images of self-replicating battle units and quantum computers that could calculate the movement of every atom in a solar system. "Logic is superior to emotion," the robot said in a flat electronic voice. "Our calculations show a 99.7% probability of victory in any conflict. Organic species inevitably submit to superior processing power." One by one, each member of the council showed their strength. Energy weapons that could crack planets, armies of genetically perfect soldiers, ships that could appear anywhere in the galaxy instantly, technologies that seemed like magic to younger species. Finally, all eyes turned to the three humans standing quietly in the center of the chamber. "And what of Earth's military capabilities?" Elder Vorth asked, his voice carrying a hint of mockery. "Surely you wish to demonstrate your achievements." Ambassador Carter looked at Captain Morrison, who nodded slightly. She turned back to the assembled aliens with that same calm smile. "We prefer to keep our military capabilities classified for now," she said simply. The chamber erupted in sounds that might have been laughter from a dozen different species. Elder Vorth's massive hand slapped his chair's armrest with a boom that echoed through the room. "Classified?" Commander Zaktor's skin flashed bright orange. "Child species always think they have secrets worth keeping. Your chemical rockets and kinetic weapons are no mystery to us." Ambassador Carter's smile never changed. "Perhaps not, but we prefer caution when discussing such matters with new acquaintances." The laughter grew louder. Even Zexathara's crystal body chimed with what sounded like amusement. "Very well," Elder Vorth said, standing to his full height of nearly 4 meters. "Let us proceed to the matter at hand. Earth is a young species entering a dangerous galaxy. Pirates, rogue states, and worse things hunt in the darkness between stars. The Council offers protection to species that cannot protect themselves." "What kind of protection?" Captain Morrison asked. "Protectorate status," Zexathara explained. "Your species would become a protected member of our organization. Council fleets would defend your systems. Council trade routes would bring prosperity to your worlds. In exchange, you would follow Council laws and contribute resources to the common defense. Essentially, you would become our vassals," Elder Vorth added bluntly. "It is a generous offer. Most species must be conquered before receiving such benefits." The three humans looked at each other. Some communication passed between them without words, the kind that only comes from working together for a long time. "We appreciate the offer," Ambassador Carter said finally. "But we need time to discuss this with our government. Such decisions cannot be made lightly." The aliens exchanged glances through their various types of eyes and sensors. Most species either accepted protectorate status immediately out of fear, or rejected it and faced conquest within days. Asking for time was unusual. "How much time do you require?" Zexathara asked. "A few months should be sufficient," Captain Morrison replied. "Months?" Commander Zaktor's skin turned a deep red color. Most species decide in hours. We are not most. Species. Sergeant Powell spoke for the first time, his voice quiet but carrying clearly through the chamber. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Zexathera approached Ambassador Carter privately, her crystal body dimmed to a softer light, the way her people showed concern. "A word of advice," she said quietly. "The galaxy is not a safe place for species without protection. There are things in the darkness that care nothing for diplomacy or negotiation. Consider our offer carefully. Ambassador C." 3 months passed after the meeting at Kepler Prime Station. The Galactic Council waited for humanity's answer, but Earth remained silent. What the aliens did not know was that during those 3 months, humanity was moving. Admiral Rachel Stone stood on the bridge of the battleship Phoenix, watching as dozens of ships took their positions around her flagship. She was a woman in her 50s, with gray hair and sharp brown eyes that had seen too many battles. Her uniform was simple black, with silver stars on the shoulders, and her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent 30 years commanding fleets. "Status report," she said to the officer beside her. Colonel Danny Brooks looked up from his data tablet. He was younger than the admiral, with dark skin and steady hands that never shook, even in the worst situations. "The first expeditionary, forces ready for deployment. All 17 battle groups are in position across the outer systems. Through the large windows of the bridge, they could see ships stretching into the distance. Some were massive carriers bigger than city blocks, their hulls painted dark gray to blend with space. Others were smaller destroyers and cruisers, built for speed and hitting power. Each ship carried a name that meant something to the humans who served on them. The carrier New York moved slowly past the Phoenix, its launch bays already busy with activity. Fighters and bombers moved in and out like busy insects, their pilots running final checks on weapons and equipment. The battleship Freedom took position alongside them, its main guns large enough to fire projectiles the size of trucks. "Any word from the scouts?" Admiral Stone asked. "Yes, ma'am," Colonel Brooks replied. "Captain Torres reports unusual movement near the hegemony border. Long-range sensors show at least 40 ships gathering in the Rigel system." Admiral Stone nodded grimly. She had expected this. The Galactic Council was getting impatient with humanity's silence, and impatient aliens usually meant trouble. "Send word to all commanders. Operation Lighthouse is now active." Far from the gathering human fleet, Dr. Amy Rodriguez worked in a laboratory buried deep under the Rocky Mountains. She was a small woman with black hair and thick glasses, but her mind was one of the sharpest in human space. Around her, dozens of scientists and military analysts studied every piece of information they had gathered about alien species. "The pattern is always the same," she said to her assistant, pointing at a holographic display that showed the expansion of Galactic Council territory over the past 1,000 years. "Every species they contact either joins willingly or gets conquered within a few years. There are no independent civilizations left in Council space." Her assistant, a young man named Kevin Walsh, frowned at the data. "What about the Outer Rim? Colonies? The reports say some species there maintain independence." Dr. Rodriguez shook her head. "Look closer at those reports. The independent colonies are actually Council mining operations using slave labor from conquered species. The Council just calls them independent to make their expansion look more peaceful." She pulled up another display showing alien military tactics. Every single Council member gained their position through conquest or submission. The Zephyrians conquered 12 species before joining. The Krillian swarm absorbed entire civilizations. Even the Crystal Hegemony, who seemed the most peaceful, destroyed 3 different species that refused to hand over their crystal technology. Kevin studied the information with growing concern. "So there's no way they'll let us remain independent?" "Not a chance," Dr. Rodriguez said firmly. "The moment we refuse their offer, they'll send a demonstration fleet to show us what happens to species that don't cooperate. It's their standard procedure." While Dr. Rodriguez studied alien behavior patterns, the Council was indeed preparing their demonstration. Commander Zaktor stood in the command center of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. watching as his fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace. Around him, 47 ships of various designs moved into formation. His skin shifted from blue to purple, a sign of anticipation among his people. The hegemony war fleet had never failed to bring a stubborn species into line. These humans would learn quickly that refusing the Council's offer was not a real option. "All ships report ready for jump," his communications officer announced. "Target system?" asked his tactical officer. "Proxima Centauri," Commander Zaktor replied. "Intelligence reports human mining operations there. We will conduct a peaceful demonstration of power. One warning shot should be sufficient to convince them." The alien fleet vanished into hyperspace, traveling faster than light toward humanity's newest colony. What they expected to find was a few mining platforms and perhaps some patrol boats. What they would actually encounter was something that would change galactic history forever. The Proxima Centauri system looked peaceful from a distance. The red dwarf star cast dim light on the rocky planets orbiting around it. Several asteroids drifted slowly through space, and what appeared to be mining equipment moved between them. To alien sensors, it looked exactly like what intelligence reports had described. Commander Zaktor's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. Immediately, their sensors began scanning for human vessels and defensive installations. What they found at first seemed to match their expectations perfectly. "Scan complete," the tactical officer reported. "Multiple mining platforms detected. Appears to be standard human industrial equipment. No significant military presence detected." Commander Zaktor's skin shifted to a satisfied orange color. "Open communications with the primary mining station. We will deliver our message and depart. This should be quick and simple." But as the alien fleet moved closer to the center of the system, something strange began to happen to their sensors. At first, it was just small glitches in the readings. A mining platform that seemed to flicker in and out of detection. A cargo ship that appeared to be in two places at once. Captain Tony Martinez sat in the command center of Liberty Station, watching the alien fleet approach on his main screen. He was a veteran of the asteroid wars, with graying hair and calm eyes that had seen every kind of space battle imaginable. His station looked like a simple mining platform from the outside, but that was exactly what it was supposed to look like. "Alien fleet is closing to communication range," his communications officer reported. "All defensive systems report ready," added his tactical officer. Captain Martinez nodded slowly. "Signal the fleet. Operation Mousetrap is now active." Across the Proxima system, things that had looked like mining equipment and cargo haulers began to change. Camouflage systems shut down, revealing their true nature. What the aliens had taken for a simple industrial operation was actually one of the most heavily fortified systems in human space. The mining platforms suddenly sprouted weapon arrays. Cargo ships dropped their disguises to reveal sleek destroyers and cruisers. The asteroids themselves opened up to show massive gun emplacements hidden inside their rocky shells. But the biggest surprise was still to come. The space around the alien fleet began to shimmer and twist as human ships emerged from places that should have been empty. Some came out of stealth systems that bent light around them. Others appeared from behind asteroids that had seemed too small to hide anything. A few even seemed to step out of empty space itself, using technology the aliens had never seen before. Within minutes, Commander Zaktor found his fleet surrounded by thousands of human vessels. His sensors were going crazy trying to count them all. Small fighters darted between larger ships like schools of fish. Massive battleships took position with their main guns pointed directly at alien vessels. "This is impossible," his tactical officer whispered. "Intelligence said they only had a few dozen ships in this entire system." Commander Zaktor's skin turned pale blue with shock. "How many ships are we detecting?" "Over 3,000, sir, and more are still appearing." The alien commander had seen many battles in his long career, but he had never seen anything like this. Somehow the humans had turned an entire star system into a trap, and his fleet had walked right into it. Captain Martinez's voice came over the communication system, calm and professional. "Alien vessels, this is Captain Tony Martinez of the Terran Defense Force. You have entered the Proxima Centauri system, which is under the protection of the United Earth government. State your intentions. Commander Zactor struggled to regain his composure. His fleet was still larger than any human force intelligence had reported. These ships might be numerous, but they were still using primitive technology. Chemical rockets and kinetic weapons could not match the power of hegemony plasma cannons. Human vessel, he replied, his voice carrying across space. I am Commander Zactor of the Hegemony War Fleet. We are here to conduct a peaceful demonstration for your government. Lower your weapons and prepare to receive our message. There was a long pause before Captain Martinez responded. When he did, his voice carried a hint of amusement that made the alien commander's skin shift to an angry red color. Commander, I'm afraid you've misunderstood the situation. This is not your space to conduct demonstrations in. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of the system. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion erupted in sounds of disbelief from the crew. No primitive species had ever spoken to a hegemony commander with such disrespect. The tungsten rod struck the Eternal Dominion with the force of small meteors. The alien flagship's hull, built to withstand plasma cannons and energy weapons, cracked like an eggshell under the impact of simple metal moving at incredible speed. Atmosphere rushed out through 17 different holes as emergency alarms screamed throughout the ship. Commander Zactor picked himself up from the floor where the impact had thrown him. His blue skin had turned pale with shock. Around him, his crew worked frantically to seal the breaches and restore power to damaged systems. Damage report, he shouted over the noise of emergency systems. Main engines offline, his engineering officer called back. Weapons array at 30% power. Hull breaches on decks 7 through 23. We're losing life support on the forward sections. The alien commander stared at his main screen in disbelief. The human station had fired simple kinetic projectiles, nothing more advanced than throwing rocks. But those rocks had been thrown fast enough to cripple his flagship in a single attack. Sir, his communications officer said urgently. The other ships in the fleet are requesting orders. The humans have weapons locked onto all of our vessels. Commander Zactor looked at the tactical display and felt his blood run cold. Every single ship in his fleet was targeted by multiple human vessels. Thousands of kinetic accelerators were pointed at them, ready to fire more of those devastating tungsten rods. Captain Martinez's voice came over the communication system again, still calm and professional. Commander Zactor, this is your final warning. Power down your weapons and prepare to leave the system immediately. The alien commander's pride warred with his survival instincts. The Hegemony War Fleet had never retreated from a battle. But he had never faced an enemy that could destroy his flagship with weapons that seemed primitive, but proved devastatingly effective. All ships, he finally ordered, his voice bitter with defeat. Power down weapons and prepare to withdraw. But the human response was not what he expected. Instead of allowing the alien fleet to leave, the space around them filled with even more human ships. What had been 3,000 vessels became 5,000, then 7,000. They appeared from every direction, emerging from hiding places throughout the system. Actually, Commander, Captain Martinez said, I'm afraid it's too late for that. The Battle of Proxima Centauri began in earnest, but it was unlike any space battle the galaxy had ever seen. The aliens expected long-range exchanges of energy, weapons, the civilized way that advanced species fought wars. Instead, the humans closed to point-blank range and fought like pirates boarding a merchant ship. Human fighters swarmed around alien cruisers like angry hornets. They were too small and fast for the big plasma cannons to target effectively, but their own weapons were perfectly designed for close combat. Missiles with conventional explosives punched through alien hulls. Machine guns fired bullets that tore through delicate alien electronics. The destroyer USS Shark, commanded by Captain Ben Turner, demonstrated the human approach to space warfare. Instead of staying at a safe distance and trading shots, Turner brought his ship alongside an alien cruiser and used magnetic grapples to lock the two vessels together. Boarding parties away, Turner ordered. Squads of human marines crossed between, the ships using small maneuvering units. They carried simple weapons that would have seemed primitive to any alien observer. Shotguns, rifles, and grenades were nothing compared to plasma rifles and energy swords. But the aliens discovered that a shotgun blast still killed just as effectively in space as it did on any planet. The human Marines moved through the alien ship like a deadly tide. They had trained for this kind of fighting for years, learning the layout of every type of council vessel from captured intelligence reports. The aliens, who were used to fighting long-range battles between fleets, had no idea how to respond to enemies who appeared in their corridors with guns blazing. Meanwhile, other human ships demonstrated tactics that made no sense to alien military doctrine. The cruiser USS Wolf suddenly split apart in the middle of battle, revealing that it was actually 3 smaller ships that had been locked together. Each piece attacked a different alien vessel, tripling the number of targets the enemy had to deal with. The battleship USS Eagle simply vanished from alien sensors, using stealth technology that bent light and radar waves around its hull. It reappeared directly behind an alien dreadnought and fired kinetic rounds into the enemy's engine section at point-blank range. But perhaps the most shocking tactic was demonstrated by the carrier USS Bear. Instead of launching fighters, it released what looked like small asteroids. The aliens ignored them, thinking they were debris or decoys. Only when the asteroids suddenly sprouted engines and weapons did they realize these were actually camouflaged attack ships. Within the first hour of battle, the alien fleet was in complete chaos. Ships that had dominated dozens of worlds found themselves outmaneuvered by enemies they had dismissed as primitives. Commanders who had won glorious victories against other council fleets discovered that none of their experience applied to fighting humans. The Zephyrian ship Golden Wing tried to use its superior speed to escape the battle zone. Its captain, a proud bird-like creature named Skethar, activated the ship's plasma drive to maximum power. For a moment, it seemed like the strategy would work. Then the space in front of the fleeing ship filled with human vessels that had somehow gotten there first. The humans had predicted the escape route and positioned ships to block it. Kinetic rounds tore through the Golden Wing's engines, leaving it drifting helplessly. How did they know where we would go? Skethar screamed at his navigation officer. The answer was something the aliens could not have imagined. Human computers had analyzed every battle the Galactic Council had ever fought. They knew exactly how each species would react under pressure, where they would try to run, and what tactics they would use. The humans had turned the aliens' own military history against them. The Krillian swarm ship tried a different approach. Instead of running, it released thousands of bioengineered warrior drones to swarm the human vessels. The tiny creatures were designed to eat through metal hulls and attack the crew inside enemy ships. The human response was swift and brutal. Instead of trying to fight individual drones, they simply ignored them. The human ships were sealed against biological attack, and their hulls were coated with substances that the bio-drones could not digest. Within minutes, the warrior creatures were floating dead in space, poisoned by hull coatings designed specifically to counter swarm tactics. Nexus Collective tried to use their superior computers to calculate a winning strategy. Their robot commanders processed millions of possible battle scenarios, looking for the combination of moves that would give them victory. But the humans were not following any logical pattern. They seemed to make decisions based on instinct and creativity rather than mathematical calculations. Human captains changed tactics in the middle of battle for no apparent reason. They took risks that no computer would ever recommend. They fought with an unpredictability that made calculation impossible. Commander Zaktor watched his fleet fall apart around him. In 3 hours of fighting, he had lost over half his ships. The ones that remained were all damaged and running, low on ammunition. Meanwhile, the human fleet seemed to be growing larger, with new ships arriving constantly from hidden bases throughout the system. "Sir," his tactical officer said desperately, "we have to retreat. If we stay here, they'll destroy the entire fleet." Commander Zaktor's skin had turned gray with despair. "Signal all ships. Full retreat to hyperspace." But even retreat proved more difficult than expected. The humans had positioned ships to block the most obvious escape routes. Alien vessels that tried to jump to hyperspace found their path blocked by human destroyers firing kinetic rounds at the exact spots where they would emerge. Some alien ships managed to escape by taking longer routes that added hours to their journey home. Others were forced to surrender when their engines were disabled. A few fought to the end, their crews choosing death over the shame of defeat. When the battle finally ended, the Proxima Centauri system was littered with the wreckage of alien ships. Of the 47 vessels that had entered the system, only 12 managed to limp back to Council space. Most of those were so badly damaged they would need months of repairs before they could fight again. The human fleet suffered casualties too, but they were minimal compared to the aliens. Less than 50 human ships were destroyed, and most of their crews had escaped in life pods before their vessels were lost. The humans had fought a battle against impossible odds and won decisively. Captain Martinez stood on the bridge of Liberty Station, looking out at the debris field that marked the site of humanity's first major space battle. Around him, his crew worked to coordinate rescue operations for both human and alien survivors. "Send a message to Earth Command," he ordered. "Tell them the demonstration was successful. The Council knows what we can do now." The news of the battle of Proxima Centauri reached the Galactic Council within hours. The surviving alien commanders transmitted their reports with voices full of shock and disbelief. No primitive species had ever inflicted such losses on a Council fleet. The emergency Council session had been going for 12 hours without a break. Representatives from all 12 member civilizations argued loudly in the Great Chamber on Kepler Prime Station. Their voices mixed together in a chorus of clicks, growls, electronic beeps, and musical tones that the translation systems struggled to keep up with. Elder Vorth stood at his full height of 4 meters, his gray skin dark with rage. "The Titan Confederacy demands immediate action. No primitive species can be allowed to destroy Council fleets and survive. We must show the galaxy what happens to those who resist our authority." The bird-like Zephyrian representative, Captain Skether, ruffled his metal feathers nervously. He had barely escaped the battle at Proxima Centauri with his life. "With respect, Elder Vorth, these humans are not as primitive as we believed. Their tactics were unlike anything we have ever encountered. Tactics mean nothing against overwhelming force," Elder Vorth replied, his voice booming through the chamber. "We will assemble the full Council fleet, 3,000 ships from across our territories. No species in galactic history has ever stood against such power." Ambassador Zexthera's crystal body chimed softly with worry. "Perhaps we should consider negotiation. The humans have proven they can defend themselves. Maybe we can find a peaceful solution." "Peaceful solution?" Commander Zaktor's holographic image flickered with static from his damaged ship. "They destroyed 35 of my vessels without warning. There can be no peace until they submit or are destroyed." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The Galactic Council had maintained its power for 1,000 years through strength and fear. If they allowed humanity to remain independent, other species might get similar ideas. The combined fleet would be assembled. Within days, ships began arriving at the staging area near the Vega system. Massive dreadnoughts from the Titan Confederacy, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. Sleek Zephyrian cruisers with their deadly plasma cannons, swarm ships that looked like giant insects filled with bioengineered warriors, crystal hegemony vessels that sparkled like jewels but carried weapons that could tear apart space itself. Admiral Cassandra took command of the fleet from her flagship, the Voice of Eternity. She was a void walker, a species that looked like living shadows with glowing white eyes. Her people had never lost a battle in their long history. They moved through space like ghosts, appearing and disappearing at will. "Fleet status report," she commanded, her voice like whisper of wind through a graveyard. 3,214 vessels reporting ready for combat," her tactical officer replied. "All member species have contributed their finest warships. This is the largest military force ever assembled in galactic history." Admiral Cassandra studied the holographic display showing her massive fleet. Ships stretched as far as sensors could detect, a wall of metal and energy that should be able to crush any opposition. "Set course for the Sol system. We will end this human rebellion once and for all." The Council fleet jumped to hyperspace, traveling faster than light toward Earth's home system. They expected to find a few dozen human vessels defending their Planet. Even if the humans had more ships than intelligence suggested, no young species could match the combined might of 12 civilizations. But when the alien fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, they found something that made their sensors struggle to process the information. The entire solar system had been turned into a fortress. Every asteroid in the belt between Mars and Jupiter had been hollowed out and converted into a weapons platform. The moons of the outer planets bristled with gun emplacements and missile launchers. Mars itself looked like a giant battleship, its surface covered with defensive installations. But the most shocking sight was the human fleet itself. Admiral Stone had assembled over 15,000 vessels of every size and type imaginable. Massive carriers that dwarfed even the largest council ships. Battleships with armor thick enough to stop anything the aliens could throw at them. Destroyers and cruisers that moved with deadly grace through the darkness of space. Colonel Steve Harper stood on the bridge of the command ship Washington, watching the alien fleet through the main viewing screen. He was a tall man with black hair and steady brown eyes that had seen action in the Outer Rim conflicts. His uniform was simple and practical, without the fancy decorations that many alien officers wore. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "Admiral Stone is requesting a fleet-wide conference." "Put her through to all ships," Colonel Harper replied. Admiral Stone's voice came over the communication system, reaching every human vessel in the solar system. "This is Admiral Stone to all fleet commanders. Today we face the largest military force in galactic history. They come here expecting us to surrender or die. They are about to learn that humanity bows to no one." A cheer went up from thousands of human ships. Men and women who had volunteered to defend their home system against impossible odds. They knew they might not survive the coming battle, but they also knew they were fighting for something more important than their own lives. Admiral Cassandra studied the tactical display on her flagship with growing concern. Her sensors were counting human vessels faster than her computers could process the information. 15,000 ships was more than intelligence had said existed in all of human space. "How is this possible?" she whispered to her tactical officer. "Our report said they had perhaps 100 vessels total." "Unknown, Admiral, but there is something else. We are detecting massive energy signatures from the planetary bodies themselves. It appears the humans have weaponized their entire solar system." The alien admiral's glowing eyes narrowed as she absorbed this information. In her long career, she had conquered 47 different star systems. She had seen every type of defense imaginable, but she had never seen an entire solar system turned into a weapon. "Begin the attack," she ordered. "All ships advance and engage the human fleet." The Council fleet moved forward in perfect formation, a wall of metal and energy that had never been defeated. Their plasma cannons charged up, ready to unleash destruction on the human defenders. Energy shields activated, creating barriers that should stop any attack. But the humans did not fight the way the aliens expected. Instead of meeting the Council fleet head-on in a traditional battle line, the human ships scattered in all directions. They moved like water flowing around a rock, using three-dimensional tactics that treated space as an ocean rather than a flat battlefield. Captain Ben Turner led a squadron of human destroyers in an attack that defied all military logic. Instead of staying together for mutual support, his ships spread out across thousands of kilometers. They appeared and disappeared using stealth technology that made them nearly invisible to alien sensors. The destroyer USS Shark suddenly appeared behind, a Titan Confederacy dreadnought, and fired a salvo of kinetic rounds into its engine section. Before the alien ship could respond, the Shark vanished again, only to reappear on the other side of the formation. The USS Wolf demonstrated a different tactic. It flew directly at a group of Zephyrian cruisers as if planning a suicide attack. At the last moment, the ship split apart into 3 smaller vessels that attacked from different angles. The aliens, expecting one target, found themselves facing 3 and could not adjust their fire fast enough. Meanwhile, the USS Eagle used its cloaking device to approach a swarm ship undetected. Instead of firing weapons, it deployed boarding pods filled with human Marines. The aliens were so focused on the space battle that they never noticed the humans cutting through their hull until Marines were already fighting in their corridors. But perhaps the most devastating human tactic was demonstrated by the converted asteroid bases. What the aliens had dismissed as stationary defensive platforms suddenly revealed hidden engines. The asteroids began moving, using their massive size to ram directly into alien vessels. A crystalline hegemony cruiser tried to destroy one of the approaching asteroids with its main cannon. The plasma beam struck the rocky surface and reflected off polished metal underneath. The asteroid was not just a weapons platform. It was a mirror designed to bounce energy attacks back at their source. Admiral Cassandra watched her fleet take losses at an alarming rate. Her ships were designed to fight other fleets in organized formations, not to deal with enemies that appeared and disappeared at will. Human vessels seemed to phase in and out of normal space using technology she did not understand. "Admiral," her tactical officer reported urgently, "we are detecting massive energy buildups from the human planet called Jupiter." On the main screen, the gas giant began to glow with unnatural light. Structures hidden in its atmosphere were activating, drawing power from the planet's own magnetic field. When they fired, beams of pure energy lanced across space with more power than any weapon the Council had ever built. A Nexus collective dreadnought, confident in its quantum shields, took a direct hit from one of Jupiter's planetary cannons. The energy beam passed through the alien shields as if they did not exist and tore the massive ship in half. "How are they generating so much power?" Admiral Cassandra demanded. "Unknown, Admiral. Our sensors cannot determine the source." The news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On every Council world, emergency meetings were called as leaders tried to understand how their most powerful fleet had been defeated by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Fear replaced arrogance in the halls of power throughout 12 different civilizations. Captain Lisa Rodriguez commanded the reconnaissance ship USS Shadow as it moved silently through Council space. Her vessel was one of dozens that had appeared near alien worlds in the days following the battle. The ships did not attack or threaten. They simply watched, making it clear that humanity could strike anywhere in the galaxy if they chose to. Rodriguez was a woman in her 30s with dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent years training for missions like this, learning to pilot ships that could move unseen through enemy territory. Her orders were simple but powerful. Let the aliens know that nowhere in their space was truly safe anymore. "Ma'am," her sensor officer reported, "we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space. Looks like they're pulling ships back from the outer territories to defend their core worlds." Captain Rodriguez nodded grimly. "Same thing we're seeing everywhere. The Council is scared. They're realizing that all their conquered worlds are now potential targets." The truth was even more disturbing for the aliens. Intelligence reports were coming in from across their territories of strange incidents that had been dismissed before. Ships that had vanished without explanation. Technical failures on important installations that might not have been accidents. Supply convoys that had arrived with missing cargo and crews who could not remember what had happened. Humanity had been operating in Council space for decades, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. Every weakness had been cataloged. Every important target had been scouted. The aliens were beginning to understand that they had been living under human observation for years without knowing it. Back on Kepler Prime Station, the Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives argued constantly about what to do next. Some called for continued war, believing that their superior numbers would eventually win. Others pushed for immediate negotiations, fearing that humanity might decide to go on the offensive. Elder Vorth sat in his massive chair looking older than his 800 years. The defeat of the combined fleet had shaken him more than any battle in his long career. "We must strike back," he said, but his voice lacked its usual strength. "The Outer Rim colonies still have ships. If we gather every vessel in Council space..." "And then what?" interrupted Ambassador Zexathara, her crystal body dim with worry. "Send them to die like the others? Face the truth, Elder. These humans have been preparing for war while we thought they were mining asteroids." The debate was interrupted by an urgent communication from the station's traffic control center. A human ship was approaching Kepler Prime, requesting permission to dock. It was a small vessel, clearly unarmed, with only 3 people aboard. "Should we deny them docking rights?" asked the station commander. Elder Vorth straightened in his chair. No, let them come. If they want to talk, we will listen. An hour later, the same 3 humans who had first visited the council walked into the chamber. Ambassador Lisa Carter, Captain Jake Morrison, and Sergeant Mike Powell looked exactly the same as they had months before. But now they walked into a room full of aliens who saw them very differently. Ambassador Carter stepped forward and smiled the same calm smile she had shown during their first meeting. Thank you for agreeing to see us again. I hope we can have a more productive conversation this time. Productive? Elder Vorth's voice shook with barely controlled anger. Your species has destroyed 2 of our fleets and humiliated the Council before the entire galaxy. What do you call productive about that? We call it establishing our credentials, Captain Morrison replied simply. You needed to understand that humanity is not a species that can be conquered or controlled. Now that we have your attention, perhaps we can discuss terms. The chamber fell silent. In 1,000 years of Council history, no species had ever come to them with terms. Civilizations begged for mercy or negotiated for better surrender conditions. They did not make demands of the Council. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, now serving as Earth's chief expert on alien politics, had prepared detailed analysis of this moment. Her recommendations were clear. Humanity needed to establish new rules for galactic relations, not just win battles. What terms? Ambassador Zexathara asked carefully. Ambassador Carter activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Human space was marked in blue, while Council territories appeared in different colors representing various member species. First, she began, the Council will recognize complete human independence. No protectorate status, no tribute payments, no Council oversight of human affairs. Our space is our own, now and forever. Elder Vorth started to object, but Ambassador Carter continued without pausing. Second, any Council member that wishes to establish trade relations with humanity will do so as equals. We will not accept any form of unequal treaty or one-sided agreement. Third, humanity reserves the right to offer protection to any species that requests it. If a civilization asks for Earth's help, we will provide it without seeking Council permission. The aliens looked at each other with expressions of shock and disbelief. These terms were not a negotiation. They were a complete restructuring of galactic politics.
This is impossible. Commander Zaktor's holographic image flickered with static. The Council cannot accept such demands. Our authority, your authority, Sergeant Powell interrupted, speaking for the first time, extends exactly as far as
your ability to enforce it. I believe recent events have demonstrated the limits of that ability. Captain Morrison stepped forward, his voice calm but carrying an unmistakable threat. Let me be clear about humanity's position. We did not seek this conflict, but we are prepared to finish it. The battles you have seen so far were defensive actions. If the Council forces us to go on the offensive, you will discover that we can be far more destructive than we have been. To prove his point, he activated his own holographic display. It showed detailed intelligence files on every major council, military installation, government center, and industrial facility. Hundreds of targets across 12 different star systems, all carefully cataloged with their weaknesses identified. We know where your leaders live, Captain Morrison continued. We know where your fleets are based. We know which worlds produce your food and which ones manufacture your weapons. If this war continues, none of those places will be safe. The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species. Some demanded immediate action against the humans. Others called for security checks to find out how their most classified information had been compromised. But beneath the anger was fear. The humans were making it clear that they could strike at the heart of Council civilization whenever they chose. The defensive battles had been just a demonstration of their true capabilities. Elder Vorth raised his massive hand for silence. When the chamber quieted, he looked directly at Ambassador Carter. And if we refuse your terms? If we choose to continue this war? Ambassador Carter's smile never changed. Then you will lose, Elder Vorth, completely and permanently. The question is how many of your people you are willing to sacrifice before accepting the inevitable. The truth behind her confidence was something the aliens were only beginning to understand. Humanity had not just prepared to defend their own systems. They had developed the ability to strike anywhere in the galaxy using technology that made traditional military thinking obsolete. Captain Tony Martinez, still commanding forces in the Proxima system, had received orders to demonstrate this capability. As the negotiations continued on Kepler Prime, human ships began appearing throughout Council space. Not to attack, but to deliver a message. On the Titan homeworld, a human vessel materialized in orbit long enough to transmit a simple communication. We could be anywhere. Then it vanished before the planet's defenses could respond. Similar demonstrations occurred across hegemony space, near Zephyrian colonies, and around swarm territories. The message was clear. Humanity's reach extended throughout the galaxy. The psychological impact was devastating. Council military commanders realized that their most secure bases could be attacked without warning. Political leaders understood that their own safety depended on human restraint. Citizens of Council worlds began to question whether their governments could protect them anymore. After 12 hours of debate, the Council reached its decision. They had no choice but to accept humanity's terms. The alternative was a war they could not win against an enemy that could strike anywhere. The Kepler Accords were signed the next day. For the first time in galactic history, the Council recognized the complete independence of another spacefaring species. Trade agreements were established based on equality rather than dominance. A new era of galactic politics had begun, but the most important change was philosophical. Several species that had been conquered by the Council began to ask questions about their own status. If humanity could maintain independence, why couldn't they? The Centauri colonies were the first to declare their freedom from Council control.